Okay, let's go ahead and put some finishing touches on this kind of nonsensical collage that we've started to build here. This isn't really anything that is super impressive looking right now, but this has shown you several different ways and introduced you to a lot of the terminology that you're going to need, as well as an introduction to some of the tips and tricks that I've given you. Now, I don't expect you to memorize every single thing that we've done. This is a matter of just getting exposure to it. The more you do it, the more you'll learn which one of these techniques will give you the best effect and give you the best results. So it's just a matter of practice and experience. So let's go ahead and actually clean this up just a little bit. I want to show you some things with alignment and transformation that will help you when we do other things. So let's go ahead and start with this first layer. I'd like to actually have two versions of this giraffe, but I want to shrink him down again. So I'm going to take this arrow, which is your move tool. I'm going to hold down my shift key and notice that when I move this around, it changes direction. When it's this hook arrow, this is going to allow me to rotate that particular subject. If I hold down the shift key when it's a white arrow, this is what's going to allow me to make this larger or smaller. So I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit, and I'm going to double click to accept it. I'm going to turn that off for a minute. What I'd like to do is I'd like to line the planet up with the gargoyle that's down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the gargoyle. I'm going to hold down the shift key and I'm going to select this background. So now you can see both of these are selected. So once again, if that wasn't there, you click on one, hold down the shift key to select a second one. Now across the top here in your options bar for your move tool, you've got auto select, which I've turned off. If your things were not kept jumping around, it's probably because this wasn't turned on, or I'm sorry, it was turned on, not off. I like to have mine off, so I have to physically click on the layer instead of having it automatically grab the layer for me. So sorry, I should have shown you that earlier if that was something that was causing you a problem. Hopefully I've solved that for you in the class. So I've got these two layers selected. Now I'm going to click on this one. It's going to line things up horizontally. Now it's lining things up horizontally, not based on the mask, but based on the actual photo. So you'll notice that didn't perfectly line things up, but it did allow me to line up at least the gargoyle. So what I can do now is I can click away from both of those. I can click on here, and a keyboard shortcut to switch to the move tool is V as in Victor. And I can use the arrow key on the keyboard. So I'm just pressing left arrow. I'm just kind of moving this around, and you can kind of eyeball it. I'm going to grab both layers again by clicking on the top one. That's the layer with the gargoyle. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on the layer with the planet. And now I can move them both at the same time. So I'm using the arrow keys left and right or up and down. And I can click away to click on one of them and just kind of move until it's the way that I want it to be. Now, one of the things that's happening that I'm realizing is I don't like the color of the table contrasting with the color of the planet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new layer right here. Now you'll notice let's take a step back actually. I'm going to move the planet on top. I'm just going to hold the mouse button down. Notice how there's a black line that shows up. This is changing the order that these layers are in. So right now, the planet is now on top of the gargoyle, and the giraffe is underneath. If I take this giraffe and I move him off to the side, let me actually select the right layer, and I move him off to the side. If I move the planet all the way to the top, it's now hiding them. So the stacking order of your layers is really important for what you want to have visible. So depending on what you're trying to do will determine whether or not you actually see the image that's underneath. So for example, here, I'm going to select the planet. I'm going to press V as in Victor to grab the move tool. And I'm going to grab this corner, but I'm going to show you another trick. If I just hold the shift key and start to drag, see it's moving and it's resizing based on that corner that I grabbed. But watch this. If I take and hold down the shift key and I hold down the Alt or Option key if you're on a Mac, what this does is it changes the size based on the center. So it's allowing me to leave it in the middle and shrink that down. Then I can just kind of drag it. So I'm trying to line it up so it's somewhat centered with the gargoyle that's down here. And I'm going to click the check mark. What I'd like to do now is I want to actually be able to see a little bit more of this giraffe. So I'm going to shrink him down a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and I'm going to grab the corner and try, just want to make sure it's the white arrow. Oh, don't know why I keep switching to that black corner. Oh well. And I'm going to rotate him a little bit. And now I'm going to move him above the planet. And I'm going to nudge him back just a little bit more so he's kind of, the neck portion is hidden behind that particular edge of the wing. Now what I'd like to do is I want to get a second giraffe, but facing the opposite direction. So I'm going to hold my mouse button down on that background and I'm going to duplicate it by dragging it onto the new layer. Now there's two that are right next to each other. What I'm going to do now is I am going to take the move tool. I'm going to move this guy over. And let's see here. I'm going to come up to the top to image, transform, and this allows me to do rotations in more of a mathematical way. So I could do 90% clockwise or counterclockwise, but I'm going to flip him horizontally. Whoops. Why is it transforming the whole thing? Okay. So Photopea is just a little bit different than Photoshop. Let me double check here. This is rotating both of them at the same time, which it really should not. I do not like that. It's actually doing it to the entire image. There's got to be a way in here to be able to transform that with only flipping one, which I know I can physically grab one of these and rotate it this way, but then I'm running the risk of it becoming distorted, which is not really what I want to have done. But for this exercise, until I can figure it out what that is, that little quirk that's slightly different than Photoshop, I'll hold off for now. So go ahead and just grab the duplicate edge and you can rotate it and try to make it look as best you can. So I'm going to flip him this way and I'll check that tomorrow to see what it is. It's probably just a quick setting. So what I want to do is I want to click on this other one and be able to move this one over. And I can tell I already distorted that one quite a bit. So I'm going to come back in, stretch him out just a little bit more. And let's do one last thing and then we'll call it a day on this one. I'm going to select this bottom wood layer. I'd like to change the color of this background because I don't like the contrast that's happening between the brown of the giraffe, the brown of the planet, and the black of the winged gargoyle. So I'd like to change the background color slightly. So let's go ahead and come down here and we'll get into more of these later. These are adjustment layers. What you're going to do is you're going to click on this circle with the black and white. Just make sure you have this layer selected first. What this will do is this is going to put a new layer, a specialized layer right above this background layer. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and try a hue and saturation adjustment. Now, as I drag this around, notice that the color is changing. Color is made up of hue, so that's just the name of the color. Is it purple, green, blue, yellow, red, whatever. Saturation is how much of the color is it? Is it like super, super saturated with tons of it, or is it less color? And then lightness is how much black or white is added to that color. So with this one, I don't care which color you end up using. You can kind of pick and choose and decide what you think looks best. I'm just going to go ahead and try to find something that's slightly different. Something like that. I can click away, and now I've got a stronger contrast on there. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a drop shadow real quick to the planet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the planet. I'm going to go to an effect. I am going to do, actually, let's try a glow. I'm going to do an outer glow. I'm going to move this over to the side. Right now it's putting this thin little line on there. What I'm going to try, we can play around with the sliders until we find something that looks good. I'm going to change the spread. Going to increase the size a little bit. It's definitely running a little slow. Now see, that's the area where there's something wrong with the mask. So we're going to fix that here. I'm going to show you how to fix that. So I'm just going to lower this down a little bit. This is starting to bog down just a little bit. I think I'm trying a little too much with this as I'm doing this on the fly. I'm going to drop the opacity down a little bit. So something like that, maybe like 50%, maybe a spread of like 43, a 74 size, and I'm going to click OK. So it gives me a little bit of this glow. Now, one of the things, see how there's that splotch that's there, and there. This is what's happened is on the mask, when I did the selection, I mentioned before there was a tiny little dot. That's actually showing up on the mask. So what I need to do is click on the mask, grab my paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint with black. Over to here. Make sure I got everything set right. I click a couple times, and that'll get rid of it. And that cleans up the edge right there. And that, I think, we'll call it a day. Just kind of an interesting little way to be able to kind of finish it up a little bit. I did mainly, when you look at this, this is what you've got going on. You've got your background. You've got this hue and saturation that changed the color. I'm fine if you choose a different color. That's perfectly fine. You've got your background layer. The thing I'm going to be looking for when I grade this is I'm going to be looking for how clean are the edges of your selection. Same thing with the two giraffes. I'm going to look at just the cleanliness of the edge of the selection. If it's slightly moved one way or the other, or you notice mine, this one's a little bit scrunched compared to that, I will look into it and see what the setting is here in Photopea that's different than Photoshop to show you how to perfectly flip it. And then this little background, I'm going to be looking at the edges. So the main thing I'm looking for when I grade this is, do you have all the items and how clean are those edges? And then the last thing I did is I added this effect to create a little bit of a glow. This is where you're going to save it. So now what you'll do is you'll save this file as a PSD and then file and export it as a JPEG. And you'll see the video on the homepage on how to or where to submit this completed one. This one was longer than I had anticipated, but I hope that this will help me speed up some of the other tutorials that we'll do because I covered a lot of terminology and explained a lot of stuff. So hopefully that helps, and I look forward to doing the next one with you.